going on with us. We don't want to be honest, or at least we don't want to be entirely honest. Meaning, I'm willing to share a little bit about myself, but to open myself up entirely would make me so vulnerable that I'm not willing to do it in the front of strangers. Okay, people I don't know. So how do you see this barrier, and how does it work itself out in your course?
See, if some of our earlier participants are here, it'll be nice to hear them also.
Mm,
One of the things that happens, Kalyanji, is very soon,
mm,
a group of people who are there are not strangers anymore.
right.
Okay, so there seems to be, this context seems to get created. Yeah. The second thing is that I think when a person comes for a course like this, they are asking themselves a question saying, look, I want to look at my life, I want to reflect on myself, and so on. So if a person comes to this program
Hmm.
without that intent, they probably won't get anything from this program.
Right.
I'm not going to discuss the stories. Yeah, like I said before in the Vyadha Gita example,
Hmm.
I'm going to ask you, what meaning are you giving?
Hmm.
Where is this meaning coming from?
Mm.
So by the time you would get to the second step saying, where is this meaning coming from,
Mm.
the story has become incidental.
Mm.
It's just been a initial mirror. I've started looking at myself, and then I start going deeper.
Mm.
Yeah. And vulnerability is a reality of life. Yeah.
Mm.
Growth happens only when I'm vulnerable.
Mm.
Yeah. If I'm not being vulnerable, growth will not happen.
Mm.
And most of the times, in my experience, when people come and start dialoguing, the issue is not that they're not willing to be honest.
Mm.
The issue is we usually, in our minds, are having a dialogue with the judge
It's
inside
22
us.
hours.
Yeah? We're not having a dialogue in a friendly manner.
Mm.
I'm judging myself. I'm saying this is right, this is wrong, you're guilty, you're not guilty, and so on. That is not a constructive dialogue at all.
Mm.
Right? Now, Krishna doesn't turn around and tell Arjuna, you're an idiot because you're feeling this way.
Mm.
Yeah? He doesn't tell him, you're useless fellow. Right? He doesn't put up some ideal and make him feel guilty or so on. He just deals with the reality of Krishna, of Arjuna, and helps him to understand certain things. So Arjuna comes up with more and more interesting questions till you finally get into sannyasa yoga level of questions. Yeah. So the difficulty is simply to let the judge keep quiet.
Mm.
The moment you let the judge keep quiet in your mind, there's a great possibilities open up.
Yeah. So you're saying that in the class, you are able to, or you along with the students in the class are together able to create a new space, a space in which authentic self-reflection becomes possible, and it is even safe to engage in, because
Absolutely.
part of the maybe the challenge or the barrier is we don't feel safe about sharing ourselves so vulnerably with others,
Yeah,
for the most part.
simply because in most usual conversations,
Uh-huh.
there's a bargain type of conversation or there's a judge kind of a thing, yeah, that is hovering around. Here, we willingly set aside all of this.
Mm.
Yeah, I think Rakesh has come on the scene. Let's ask him what he experienced
Yeah.
last time he came to the program. Yes,
Hello.
Rakesh. Hi.
Namaste, Rakesh. Yeah, welcome. Please.
Hari Om Raghuji, Hari Om
Hari
Kalyanji, and
Om.
everybody
Hari Om. Hari Om.
else.
Yes. Yes.
So nice to be in this class and wonderful to be in this occasion.
So, Rakeshji, why don't you, as somebody who has taken Raghuji's class, share a little bit about your experience and what kind of specific transformation occurred for you in the course itself?
Sure, it would be my pleasure to do so. So just as a background, I'm also a corporate citizen. I have a regular job. I have a family. I have children. My kids are going to college. So they are. I would just like to submit myself as one of the regular people around who have regular problems in life and regular agitation in the mind. Lots of questions and so on and so forth. And I have also been, studying a lot of Vedanta in the past, and Bhagavad Gita. I practice yoga, I practice meditation. So I came to Raghuji's class with a decent background, so to speak, in the philosophy that we have. And I must just say that Raghuji is extremely well read and well versed in all our ancient traditions, philosophies, and pretty much like he's got a wonderful way of engaging with the audience. I think Raviji asked me a question, where am I from? I live in New Jersey, Raviji. And I think, he did an excellent way of setting the stage with the Samkhya philosophy, which I think is like a bedrock for the Yoga Sutras. And very soon we realized that, Patanjali is one of the most erudite and original therapists in Indian history, so to speak. And the Yoga Sutras, which are so terse and extremely, I would say, precise, so to speak, need a lot of exposition, just like the Bhagavad Gita does, to go through each verse. And Raghuji pretty much knows, I think, every sutra by heart and the application of it. So it was not just, I would say, a theoretical class, and we learned a lot in the theory session, but the practical aspect of the class was just amazing. And I think Raghuji just talked about creating this space in which everybody could share their experiences and talk about their problems. I think the first thing that every individual realizes is that no individual's problems are unique. I mean, we all think that we are going through unique problems. We all think that nobody else is facing the same issues that we are facing. And the mind is playing so much tricks on ourselves, so to speak. And very soon, because of the safe space that Raghuji creates in his class, I think there's a huge, I would say, dialogue between all the participants. And the participants really quickly understand that with deep listening, you can actually understand where other folks are coming from. And a resolution to their problems gives ourselves a lot of resolutions to our own questions that we have internally. And I think when you hear that and you see there's deep healing that's going on in the class, on a within the parameter, and I can tell you that every class was probably for 1 hour. I think Raghuji, we went for 1.5 hours almost every
90
class.
minutes to,
Yeah, we probably went from 90 minutes to 2 hours. Yes, we did an extra half an hour on every class, and I think we formed a very tight bond. I think Raghuji helped us through a lot of processes, and at the end of it, I think we all walked away with the one thing that I think we all came to the course for, which is number one was if there was a deep hurt, we understood how to look at that deep hurt and resolve it from a very deep space. And secondly, we came to a place where there was much more peace and our mind could be stable, so to speak. So I'm really indebted and so happy that I took the course, Raghuji.
Okay. So, Rakeshji,
thank you, Rak.
thank you so much for sharing. If I may just press a little bit, if you don't mind, okay. Okay, can you be a little specific about a specific issue that got resolved for you in that course, personally?
Totally, and I'm happy to share in this forum among all you strangers who I know nothing about, so to speak. So when I was growing up in India, I used to have this ad, and I don't know how many in the audience have resonated to this ad for Raymond's. It's a clothing line. It's a suits. And when we used to grow up in India, we used to have these huge billboards there, which said something like, the tagline was like the perfect man or something.
Complete
like
man.
The complete man. Yeah, it kept changing a little bit, Raghuji. Like, I mean, they would change the messaging a little bit here and there. But it was always like this one person who had a beautiful car, a beautiful bungalow, a beautiful wife, kids, and you'd be in a very dapper suit. He would come home and he would hug his kids, and there was this lot of this, I would say, success metrics with empathy and emotional, and you would look at this whole picture and say, how could one person be all of these things? And isn't it impossible, kind of thing? But at least in my case, it was like, yeah, it was an aspirational ad, Reshmadi, exactly. You would look at it and say, that's a high barrier. That's how you would want to get to perfection, so to speak, in your life. And I think, if you do Raghuji's class, you'll soon understand. If you do Vedanta, you'll understand where this gap comes from, internal gap. And we are always striving to fill this gap, and how we are looking for external things to validate that gap. So we are always looking to acquire things outside. Now, I have acquired a lot in my life. I mean, I have a beautiful house, I have a beautiful family. I'm very successful in what I do. Everything is going fine. But why am I still unhappy? And why am I still agitated? This was the simple one question that has been plaguing me personally for many years, right? And when I came to the course, and through other studies, you'll realize that it's not the external gap; it's actually the internal gap that you have to reconcile, and you have to look within and not look without, to get all these things in life that will make you complete or make you whole, right? And I think if you do the study of Vedanta, you will get to this point easily, in my opinion. But it doesn't tell you how to do it, how to look within. And this whole concept of, pratyahara, this whole concept of dharana, and going within yourself, that is one thing that I think I can tell you that I got from Raghuji's class. And it was through exercises, it was through mental simulations, it was through group activities, so to speak. It was talking to all of the participants, and having small group sessions and helping each other, and so on and so forth. And that's why the name of the course is also Antaranga Yoga, as in like the yoga within, as opposed to the yoga without. And whether you read Vivekananda, or whether you read Raj Yoga, or whether you read Antaranga Yoga, I think they are all kind of like giving you what I call the knowledge, so to speak. But I think Raghuji's class was like one class, and the fantastic class where actually I could practice it. And once you practice it and actually use it on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute, second-by-second basis, I think that is what inner transformation is all about. And I'm thankful for that.
Terrific, fantastic, very, very well done in terms of sharing yourself and explaining, illustrating, more like illustrating what happens in the course. Now, Antaranga means inner yoga, as distinct from Bahiranga, which is outer yoga versus inner yoga. So there's this distinction. So Raghuji, can you explain how the course is structured and how it works over the course of one quarter?
Yeah, this particular course, we are having 11 sessions on the whole. And it's got 1.5 hour sessions each. Yeah, and we start off by enabling the participants to have some sort of framework through which to start looking at oneself. That's what we look at on the first class. And then we offer selected stories from the Mahabharata. And each week, the participants are expected to read the story and come to the class. And we have a dialogue around the story. So you take Yudhishthira, or you take Bhima, we look at each of them. We start by looking at the story, and then we say, how am I a Yudhishthira, or how am I a Bhima? And through this process of introspection, we get into insights into our own nature, right? And which are the parts of me that I have nurtured, which parts have I not nurtured, how do I become the best that I can be, what's the ideal combination of these. And also, the Mahabharata is so beautifully structured that you have stories that talk about what is now called the bright side or the light side of the person, and there are stories that talk about the shadow sides of each of the heroes. So we examine all of this and enable a person to have an insight into their own mind. Yeah, and people are expected to write a review each time, so there's some journaling going on. So it's a fairly deep self-reflective process that you understand how to work with. So a, what I expect a participant to go away with is learning how to look at myself. I am not, that concerned about specific outcomes and specific content-based learning, like Rakesh was saying. So if I take back the process of how to look at myself and create a space within through which I can look at myself, that is permanent. But if I'm taking back a few ideas here and there, that doesn't really help. So I think most of the times, I end up having a lot of insights through every one of the workshops I do, which is why I get into it. I'm assuming also that most of the participants get a lot too.
Okay. So Raviji, so the characters of the Mahabharata, whom you brought up, and you reflected on the what is great about each character, but also what is the shadow side of each character, what doesn't work about each character. And all of us have parts of our being that really work, and some parts that don't work so well, and this type of engagement with the characters of the Mahabharata, meaning to use the characters as a mirror, in fact, the collection of characters of the Mahabharata become like a kaleidoscopic mirror, so to speak, in which we are reflected in so many different ways.
That's right.
Is this I mean, it is hard to imagine that this type of approach to the Mahabharata has been particularly popular in the past. Is this a new innovation that you have made in this particular course, Antaranga Yoga, or have you derived from some traditions that already existed within the Hindu world, so to speak?
See, I guess it's a bit of both, Kalyanji. See, for example, if you look at the Yoga Sutra, for you to do the Swadhyaya part, what Krishnamacharya would recommend is to read these stories, Ramayana and Mahabharata, as though they reflect one's own psyche. Right? And then you have the theater traditions and the dance traditions. Now, these theater and dance traditions have a very, very strong reflection of the self. They're supposed to do that through Rasanubhava and so on. They are supposed to invoke in you whatever is being portrayed or whatever is being sung and so on. Yeah, so that's another tradition that is there in the Indian continuity, which is supposed to enable you to go into a self-reflective space. So Abhinava Gupta is very clear about this. That's the purpose of theatre. Yeah? So there's a lot of these kinds of indicators already in our system. So I've kind of put it together and brought it to the fore at one level, I guess.
Yeah. Great. So now can you offer some brief remarks on how the method or the process that you are using in this course compares with, say, contemporary psychology or psychotherapeutic methods and so on? I mean, have you done any comparative work? Uh, can you say a few words on that?
I can um, I can contrast it,
Mm,
and I tell you where the overlaps are and some degree of this thing. See, in Western psychology, what seems to have happened is, in my understanding, though it started off with introspection being given a space,
mm,
introspection has been pushed out of Western psychology, right? So there are people like William James and Wilhelm Wundt and all that who did use introspection, right? But later on, because of their focus on measurement and so on, it's become an outside-in study rather than enabling a person to have an inside-out introspective understanding of their own psyche.
yeah.
The Yoga Sutra is a complete text on introspective processes.
Mm,
And the Mahabharata and Ramayana are written specifically to enable this introspection.
mm,
So, in the beginning of Mahabharata, for example, there's a clear statement where Brahma is supposed to have a discussion with Vyasa. He says, in order for common people to understand the depths of yoga and the Shastras, you have to have a rasatmik story that enables them to enter those spaces, and through these characters that you write, discover their own dharmic uh, options in life.
mm,
So it's an express design criteria that you have to get into an introspective space.
mm.
So this is one thing that I think is specific to Indic ways of looking at psychology.
Yeah.
And Yoga Sutra is definitely psychology, profound psychology. Yeah. The second area of similarity is there's a lot of similarity between Jungian ways of looking at the mind and yoga, simply because Jung copied from here.
Mm,
Yeah, in a sense that he took a lot. And recently his Red Book has come out, which is a huge big book with drawings and beautiful book, where he talks about reading the various Upanishads, the kind of dreams and other kinds of insights that he got through reading the Upanishads, through which he developed his whole idea of the psyche, the self with the small s, the self with the large s, and that whole process that he developed is heavily dependent on a study of the Upanishads and so on. But for some reason, he at one point of time ran away from really looking at the yogic thing fully. Because he says that to understand the yogic process, you have to allow yourself to dissolve. And in one of the papers, he actually says he got scared of this.
mm,
So he made an appointment to meet Ramana Maharshi,
mm,
and he says, I was afraid of looking at the white dot on a white piece of paper.
mm,
So he doesn't go for that meeting.
mm,
Yeah?
mm,
And he talks about how difficult this process is. But
mm,
the whole of the Yoga Sutra process is for you to recognize your identity creation processes and then give up those processes and go into a much deeper space.
mm.
Yeah. So this is a definite difference. But every significant movement of psychology has taken place because of dipping into either Buddhist or Indian thought. There's no two ways about it. Right from Freud's time. The idea of Eid, it's been recorded recently, has come from a discussion with a scholar who talked about the Tao. Right? And then Gestalt takes a lot from Zen Buddhism. You have humanistic psychology, which takes a lot from Buddhist and Indian thought. You have the latest movement, CBT and DBT, which have been started by people who've been anointed as monks in Dalai Lama's space.
Yeah.
So lot has been taken, but for some reason it's been put into not the introspective space, except DBT and CBT a little bit, but more into describing the mind from the outside. So psychology has become a tool in the hands of the therapist to deal with a patient, whereas all the Indian methods, fundamentally Yoga Sutra, is meant to help you have insights into yourself. And this is much more powerful. Yeah, though I don't deal with people who are in therapy. Yeah, a lot of work that I do, people who are kind of close to it come. Yeah, and invariably they get a lot. But this is a much more permanent thing. Once they learn how to look at themselves
Yeah.
and keep these, voices of the judge and so on at bay, a whole, something completely different opens up. The possibilities are immense.
Right. And would you say a deep engagement with this subject, uh, like Rakesh Parameshwarji shared, ultimately leads the student in the direction of being more settled about themselves, more contented with their own lives, more peaceful and happy with how things are as they are, rather than living in some kind of uh, this disturbance between how things are and how things should have been or should be.
Yeah,
Is
this
that
is
a
no, this is one definite possibility, but I think it goes more than further than that.
hmm,
Yeah, not just an adjustment with my life and some kind of a contentment,
yeah,
but actually dipping into possibilities in yourself
hmm,
which you didn't see
hmm,
before.
okay.
Would you agree
So
with me, Rakesh?
Absolutely. In fact, on the subject of the last question, also, I'm reading this book called "The Power of Now" by Eckhart Tolle,
Hmm.
and it is a bestseller. It's sold millions of copies in the US. It's extremely, well known here and followed as well. And most of the principles are the similar principles that we covered in the course, Raghuji. So I think a lot of people are actually completely taking. And I think to answer your question specifically, at some point when you look at all the hurts inside the deep hurts that you are carrying internally, and you can dissolve them in our language, uh, then I think you're open to so many infinite possibilities in at
hmm,
every moment. And when you're fully present in the moment, there is no limit to, I think, what we can do. And I truly believe that at this point.
okay, so it is not so so Raghuji, it's a very important point. So it is not just that we achieve a measure of settledness and happiness and contentment with our own life as it is, but all of a sudden, entirely new avenues, vistas, new possibilities for exploration begin to emerge for the participants in the course. And that is the real value of the course, in the sense it's not predictable what those vistas and avenues might really be at the beginning, but you recognize looking backward that wow, this happened to me and I did not even expect it. I didn't even go in wanting something like this, but I got something that I didn't even want. So it's in that sense the course can surprise the students in terms of the value that it really provides, right? Is that a fair
That's,
summation?
yeah, there's a high possibility of it, let's say, because it's a two-way street, no?
Sure.
You have to bring in as much as you, yeah, you get from this as much as you bring in types.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
Absolutely.
distinct possibility, and it's happened many, many times. I can
Yeah.
say that for sure.
Great. So two things. Ankur, can you put up the survey for this course? And clearly, the course begins in about a week's time. little over a week's time.
13th or something, no?
13th of October. 13th of October. And if you haven't done the course, it's a great course to explore and engage with. So Ankur will put up the survey in just a moment. In the meantime, there is a Q&A box. If you have any questions, please type in the question in the Q&A box, and we'll take a few questions. Okay, so there is a survey. Are you interested in the course? That's the question. You can say yes or no, and maybe I have a question. So please, everybody, just go ahead and answer the question. You can say no, I'm not interested. That's fine. You can say maybe. You can say yes. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Kalyanji.
Sorry?
We definitely hope people say yes.
Yeah, definitely. That's right. I would invite everybody to answer. Okay, there are about 60 odd people in the webinar. Please, everybody provide an answer. Okay, it's a very easy, 15 seconds.
There's one question that I'm not quite clear about. Somnath Sinha. Can Raghuji comment on how work today is broken down into tasks and email is used to move these tasks to a completion state?
Okay, so that is not relevant for this.
Yeah, okay.
It's not relevant for this. Okay, this is a deeply reflective course. Let me read out another question from Dr. Mahesh. Both pratyahara and dhyana are interconnected. Without deep meditation, to the power of meditation, you can't detach the mind. How do you describe Antaranga yoga in this background? Saying something about detaching the mind.
No, I'd be a little careful about words like detaching the mind and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, pratyahara, in my understanding of the Yoga Sutra, is to feed the mind differently from the normal ways in which we feed it. We get into certain patterns of interaction with the world. When we get into this pattern, this is what we feed, and we end up feeding what is called the bhoga cycle.
It's 22:30.
Yeah. When you recognize this and you stop this and turn inward, you can start a whole different way of engaging with the world. So pratyahara is pulling back from the current ways of engaging, gathering all your energies together and putting it into a direction that you choose to put it into.
Yeah.
So that is dharana.
Yeah. So it's an interesting way of framing it. So just to kind of come back full circle, would you say Mahatma Gandhi, whose birthday it is today, did engage in deeply collecting his own personal energies and redirected it in a profound way towards the independence struggle of India?
Absolutely, no. He does that over and over again. And when he makes a mistake, he stops and says, I haven't worked enough with myself, and goes back. Yeah, there's a very famous story, Kalyanji. I'm sure many people know this. When one of his friends comes and says, please tell my son not to eat sweets. He says, come back in 2 weeks' time. So he comes back in 2 weeks' time and he tells the child, don't eat sweets. So this fellow says, why didn't you tell him that 2 weeks back? He said, 2 weeks back, I was eating a lot of sweets.
Right. So he had to stop.
I had to do pratyahara. Now I have to pull back from this, look at this whole energy and find a way of stopping this, right?
Yeah.
There's one question here that says, what are medical applications of this course? No, I'm not clear I understand it, but if a person has a medical condition or whatever, I don't think one would recommend this course. Fundamentally, because it's over this web and one doesn't know what's happening. Yeah. Second is wondering how many hours we expect to spend per week. An hour and a half is the official time of the class, and depending on how interesting the dialogue is, it sometimes spills over. You'll probably be expected to do another hour or so of work reading the story and reflecting on it. Do we need to have prior knowledge? You don't have to have any prior knowledge of any text except reading the stories that are sent across.
There's a very interesting question. Does this course help discover your purpose of your life,
Yes,
meaning of your
it
life,
does.
and
It
so on?
could.
Yeah, it could.
It could. Yeah, it could.
Yeah. Somebody's saying, do you need to know the Bhagavad Gita? No, you don't need to know the
No,
Bhagavad
you
Gita
don't need to.
at all. That's a different course, and it's worth taking that course too. But this is what we're looking at right now. Yeah. So Bishweshwar is asking how anybody can be absolutely or completely. How can one become philosophical to Nishkama Yoga? It's an abstract question. So
Come to the
Raghuji,
course and discover types. No?
come to the course. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And Jayanti Hari is making a comment. This is the beginning. Is this the beginning of psychology in our system? Yeah. In fact, let me take that question a little bit. See, the amazing thing is because the um, Raghuji, can you go on mute for a moment? Maybe I'll put you
Oh,
on
yeah. Okay, okay.
not a noise. Okay. Yeah. So because the Vedic culture right from the very beginning was very deeply introspective, and it very early on distinguished that the knowledge is of two kinds: the objective knowledge of what can be observed, measured, empirically studied out there in the world. But then there's also this other world of knowledge which is inner, Antaranga, what cannot be measured by through the senses, sensorily perceived and understood, but rather it has to be explored inwardly. So it had an extraordinary commitment to that inner exploration right from the beginning. I mean, you go back to, yoga goes back to the so-called Indus Valley, Sindhu Saraswati civilization. There are so many figurines in yoga and Pashupati seals and so on and so forth. So this inwardness has been there, and therefore the ability to examine oneself, and explore one's inner world, inner psyche, has been an integral part of I would say, the Vedic and Hindu traditions, which spilled over into Buddhist, Jain, and Sikh traditions of India as well. So, really speaking, psychology as a discipline originated in that part of the world, in India. Okay. If you look at the Western world, the psychology in the Western world is attributable to the 1870s CE. Okay, where the first speculations on psychology, started to emerge in Germany, that too. And the Germans, already had 50 years of time by the 1870s, more than 50 years, when they had not only started translating Sanskrit texts into German, they had set up numerous chairs of Sanskrit departments in various universities in Germany. And the study of Sanskrit texts and exploration of Sanskrit texts had become part and parcel of German university education in that period of time. And even though the so-called inventors of Western psychology, I don't know if I get the name of the first person who called himself a psychologist instead of a philosopher. But Sigmund Freud comes soon thereafter, and Carl
I
Jung
think
comes
it was
soon.
William Wundt.
William Wundt, that's correct. Raghuji, absolutely. William Wundt. See, even though they don't make much of a mention of their deep engagement with Sanskrit texts, it is hardly it can hardly be a coincidence that at the time they were exploring Sanskrit texts in Germany, psychology emerged as a field of study, as a new field of study, unknown until this point to the Western world. Okay. So whereas what we call psychology in the English language today has been understood in India for more than 2,000, 3,000 years in the form of yoga, particularly Antaranga yoga, inner yoga. And that inwardness is almost the defining feature of the Hindu civilization, I would say. Ravi, you want to add anything, please? Go.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I might add is that specific references to the mind and how the mind changes and all that is there in Ayurveda, which is earlier than Mahabharata. The Mahabharata quotes some of these things. It quotes Sankhya as something before the Mahabharata. Yeah, and there are, even Ramayana, there are passages, there are ways of looking at Ramayana which actually have a very deep psychological component to it. The whole story can actually be looked at as a story of psychological transformation.
Yeah. No, that's great. Excellent. So, Ankur, put up the course, link in the chat window. I'd like to invite those of you who are ready for this exploration. Meaning, if you find that you are at a place in life where you'd like to engage deeply in some self-reflection, and
There are a couple of questions here in the question box.
yeah,
Is there anything we do which is only external and not some part or the other is internal always? Yeah, everything is all meaning making is actually subjective only. So it all arises from the inside. We may or may not be aware of it. And I guess this course is to help you become more and more aware of how you make your choices. Based on your experience in running the course, what happens when one has a deeper inner reflection? What does it lead to? It leads to greater and greater understanding of the self, Swadhyaya. The more you understand yourself, the more choiceful you become. The more, you can be more versatile, I guess. At times through dialogue, we realize something profound, but at many times old habits take over. That's exactly why we teach you practices and we don't give you content. Because you take back the practices, and the more you practice it, the less your old habits are going to come back to you. Yeah, sorry.
yeah. Sudhir Kumar is asking, how does inwardness help when the whole world is becoming more outward oriented?
That's why it helps.
Yeah. In fact, I would put it this way. See, when you know yourself more deeply, know yourself in the sense of you can be responsible for your unique character, your unique strengths and weaknesses, and what works and what doesn't work about you. It deeply supports the appropriate relationship with the external world, and you're no longer driven circumstantially. You know what I mean? When I say driven circumstance, Raviji, you need to go on mute again. Sorry.
Yeah, I need to.
Yeah. So to be driven circumstantially is to be primarily driven by what the world around you is telling you, what is important, what is success, what is happiness, how to accomplish things, how to accomplish happiness, how to become successful, and so on. Whereas in the Indian context, the Hindu context, the Vedic context, all of these are very deeply inwardly situated. And when you understand yourself inwardly, and you develop the abilities to go inward and be safe and comfortable and at peace with your own inwardness, it profoundly reorganizes your life externally also. Because everything is first inner and then it comes outer. It's not like consciousness is some byproduct of molecules randomly organizing themselves into phenomena. No, consciousness is primary. Everything else comes out of there. So this is a great, real, almost like a paradigm shift for many people whose orientation has been predominantly outward in your life, where being driven in the pursuit of various outward metrics of success, like Rakesh Mishra was saying, can be balanced with a deep inner foundation and grounding. Okay, so that's the opportunity of this course. And I want to invite everybody who is ready for this. If you're ready for an authentic exploration of your own inner life, inner self, and develop the capacities for inwardness and inner exploration, introspection, like Raghuji was saying, this is a good time to register for this course. So Ankur, you want to say anything to close out the webinar? I'd like to.
No, why don't we just give Raghuji or yourself last words? Just please enroll. We're already close into the start of the fall quarter. Please enroll and continue this conversation. Thank you for joining us today. Kalanji, I'll let you close it out, or Raghuji.
So Raghuji, anything for you?
Yeah. I don't know, I enjoyed this dialogue, and I hope people who are listening enjoyed the dialogue too. And we'd love to see you in the course.
Great. All right, fantastic, everybody. Thank you all. Namaste. And we hope to see you in the class. That's what this is all about, really, to give you a taste of this course so that you may get perhaps interested in participating. Okay. Namaste to all of you. With that, we will take leave. And Raghuji, it's late for you. We'll let you go at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Namaskar. Namaskar.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot, Rakesh.